Hope everyone's having a pleasant day. We're driving out from Michigan to a place called Tracy, California. There's a big DLA depot there, and we've got kind of an urgent delivery to make of about 5 pallets of first aid kits for the Navy. And we're in our 2021 F-150. We just hit 80,000 miles in the last half hour or so. And this truck continues to impress us in almost every way. With a 28-foot all aluminum Featherlight gooseneck trailer hitched up. Our total weight today is 14,000 pounds, which is 7,000 on the trailer wheels, the trailer axles, 3,500 on the drives, and 3,500 on the steers. So it's almost a perfect weight distribution between the trailer and the truck, and then in the truck between the two truck axles. The GVW on this truck is 7,100 pounds, so we are just under the limit. And when you're driving a light-duty pickup, you always have to be concerned about the weight on the truck axles, in addition to the weight on the trailer axles, because again, with an F-150, this thing does not have the max tow package, which would have boosted the GVW by 250 pounds. And it's definitely not the heavy-duty payload package, which would have taken it up all the way up to like 7,750, I think. So you're looking at 7,100 max between the front, between the drive and the steer axle. And you can't go off of the axle weight limits or the GAWRs, because the sum of those is larger than the GVW. So I think on the front and the rear, it's give or take 3,750 each. But if you load to the max on the front and the rear axles, you're over the maximum allowable weight. You're at 7,500, and the max allowable weight combined is 7,100. Again, on this truck with just the standard tow package. So it's something to keep in mind. You got to be very careful of how much stuff you load in the cab, how many passengers. You got to be careful. You got to keep in mind your fuel level when you're weighing in, because you might be under the limit with a quarter tank. And then when you go and top off, you know, your fuel tank in this truck is 30 gallons, and that's almost 250 pounds. So if you weigh in at a quarter tank and you're under the limit, you might top off your truck and wind up over the limit. So you got to be careful about that. And then you got to be cautious about how you load the freight, meaning where you distribute it inside the trailer, and how much is, you know, how far back you load it. Because even though a gooseneck is much, much less likely to start acting up on you and swaying and trying to get away from you than a conventional trailer, you can still load the weight too far back and unload the hitch to where you don't have that. I think it's around 20% that you're supposed to have on the hitch. And the trailer could still start to act up on you a little bit. Especially in heavy winds. And oh, by the way, we're driving through Nebraska this morning, and the winds have kicked up, and they're pretty ferocious. It's about a 20-mile-an-hour headwind. And so our MPGs for the day, and we reset this meter every day, we're at just over 10. And you notice we're in 8th gear, and we don't, and we've locked out 9th and 10th. And the reason for that is because we have to keep the RPMs up at or above 2,000 RPMs. When you're loaded heavy, you just don't want the RPMs going down below 2,000, give or take, because that puts way too much stress on the engine. And you notice our boost is, we're at 20 plus PSI, and when you're towing with this thing, with the diesel F-150, your boost is going to be over 20 PSI for almost the entire time you're towing. And the problem that creates, as you know, is that boost is an indicator of how much power your engine's having to put out. And when your boost creeps up, you have to keep the RPMs up, because in order to produce the power that your truck needs to go down the road, at a lower RPM, it's going to have to produce a much, much larger amount of torque. And when you get down below 2,000, you're getting closer and closer to maxing out the torque, which I think is around 450 on this thing. And the more torque you produce, that's the more stress on all your internal components, your connecting rods, your piston rings, your head gaskets, all that stuff. And so you just want to keep the RPMs up to reduce the torque demand. Again, because power is just RPMs times your torque. And so the lower your RPMs go, the higher your torque has to go to generate the same amount of power. And again, you can use that boost gauge as essentially a power gauge. The more boost that your engine is demanding from that turbo, the more power it's trying to generate. And so again, our MPGs are way down today. We're at just about 10, and that's because of the very, very stiff headwind that we're fighting. Yesterday, that was not the case. We went through Iowa and Nebraska, in the eastern half of Nebraska yesterday, and it was just not that windy. And we were looking about, I think our MPGs for the day were around 15. Our MPGs the day before, going through like Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois, were just over 16. And so this truck can generate some truly amazing MPG figures, even with 7,000 pounds on the trailer axles and about 1,500 of hitch weight. So we're talking 8,000 or 8,500 total trailer weight. And that's pretty astounding to be in the teens, to be like 15 MPGs, 16 MPGs, pulling an 8,000 or 8,500 pound trailer. That's extraordinary. But again, today it's down by about a third, down to about 10 MPGs, and the ground's completely level. It's extremely flat when you get to the western half of Nebraska. A little bit less so in the eastern half of Nebraska, and much less so in Iowa. It's sort of gently rolling the entire way, so you get these slight uphills and slight downhills. And what that means for this truck, again, a diesel with not a lot of power, only 250, and a 331 rear axle, which is super tall, which is entirely too tall to be towing with if you can avoid it. It means you're in 8th gear on the flats at about 2,000 RPM. And you're in 7th gear going uphill, even up a slight incline at about 2,500 RPM. If we had a stronger engine, or if we had a shorter rear axle, like a 373, which would be perfect for this truck, then we wouldn't have to be stuck in 8th gear. We could be in 9th gear. And as you know, a shorter rear axle, meaning a higher number on the rear axle, it generates a lot more leverage for you between the drive shaft and the wheels, and it means that there's that much less strain on the transmission, because it's not having to multiply torque nearly as much in order to turn those back wheels, because the differential and the ring and pinion and the differential are giving you much more mechanical advantage over the wheels. So that's why it's just better, the more towing you do, to have a shorter final drive, a shorter axle ratio. Even though you might say, well, it doesn't make a difference, I can just downshift a couple gears. Yeah, you can downshift a couple gears, but you're still putting an enormous amount of strain on your transmission. It's as if you're going uphill constantly. The taller your differential, the taller your axle ratio. And so the 331 is not the axle you want in this truck. I know a lot of the Chevy, a lot of the Duramaxes come with 342s. The heavy duty, the 6.6, come with a 342, and I feel like a lot of the Ram 3500s come with a 342. And if it works for them, you know, more power to them. But in a light duty towing, again, about 8,000 to 8,500 pounds, you don't want that tall of a rear axle, because your 10R80, which is already a light duty transmission that's already under a lot of stress to begin with, the taller your rear axle, the more stress you're putting it under. And that's clutches, and that's, you know, everything, the torque converter, the hydraulic fluid, everything. And whatever you can do to make that transmission's life easier will make it last longer. Incidentally, this is this truck, even though it's a 21 model year, it was built in spring of 22. We picked it up in March of 22. It was one of the last 10 or 12 that were ever made of the diesel. And this 10R80 in it, the transmission is the original one, not the one that has that fix to the bushing and the CDF drum. That fixes a lot of the trouble that these transmissions have had. And yet, we've had no trouble with it. At about 3.5 years of ownership and 80,000 miles, it's still running just fine. No weirdness, no rough shifts, no sudden downshifts, no nothing. It's just working like a champ. And pretty much everything about this truck is working like a champ. It's just a solid, tough little truck, and it has worked out very, very well for us, even though it's enormously complex. Got a very complicated transmission, got a ton of electronics. It's got the 12-inch CarPlay. It's got the analog gauges, which we prefer, and which they got rid of in the 2024 refresh. It's got this sort of center information screen there, which is very, very useful. It's got a primitive self-driving system, which is known as lane keeping and lane centering, which has an electric motor in line with a steering column that does most of your steering for you when you're on the highway. And it makes these long drives go very, very, very smoothly. Again, a massive amount of complexity in this truck. And yet at 80,000 miles, it's had basically no trouble. Essentially no trouble. We get little updates every now and then. For the vast majority of time we own this truck, it never gave you turn-by-turn directions in the dashboard when you were using Google Maps on the Apple CarPlay. And maybe that's because Apple didn't feel like making your life any easier if you were using their competitor's product, meaning Google Maps. If you were using Apple Maps, yes, it would give you turn-by-turn directions in the little center readout there. And only recently, in about the last 6 or 8 months, it has started doing the same thing with Google Maps. This truck was hit by a tree, just like our first F-150 that we owned. A tree fell on it, a pretty thick tree, 14 inches thick, and dented the roof. But fortunately, because we don't have a sunroof, because for a lot of reasons you don't want a sunroof, it didn't smash the sunroof and let a ton of water in and ruin the interior. It just dented. It made about a 2 or 3 inch depression almost in the center of the roof. Didn't do any structural damage. You can't see it from inside. And put some bumps and scrapes on the elsewhere in the body, in the bed, but didn't, and came very close to damaging the door frames and the door seals, but didn't. And so the door is still open and closed just fine. All the glass and windows are completely undamaged. And so, I mean, with an enormous, like 40+ foot tree falling on this thing, it survived largely intact. We've had, the only maintenance we've done is oil changes, and every other oil change, meaning about every 30,000 miles, we change out the fuel filter and drain the fuel water separator, as you should in any diesel-powered vehicle. No weirdness with the emission systems. It doesn't tell you when it's doing a regen, but every now and then you can smell the regen, because it smells truly awful if it's regenning while you're stationary. Obviously, you can't tell when you're driving. No issues otherwise with the DPF. No issues with the DEF system. And it actually doesn't go through a ton of DEF. We topped it off. Well, this trip is 1,000 miles. We're into it at an average of 14.5 mpgs. Again, which is 14.5 mpgs are extraordinary when you're towing an 8,000 pound trailer. About 1,000 miles prior to that, we topped off the DEF, and so it's been 2,000 miles with this 28-foot trailer hitched up, running on the highway at pretty heavy load, and the DEF is still, I think we're close to needing it. It tells you all this stuff. Yeah, we're down to 22% DEF remaining, so we've used 80% of the DEF in 2,000 miles under heavy load on the highway with a 28-foot trailer hitched up. And as indicated, the oil changes have been obviously straightforward. It uses a cartridge type oil filter, and the recommended oil most of the time is 530. You can use 540 if you're doing a lot of towing, which we do. Full synthetic, obviously. As I understand it, you don't need that special full synthetic that like a European diesel, like our cheating VW Passat needs, which is called low ash synthetic. And it uses that because I guess regular mobile one will start to gunk up the DPF in that European VW TDI. This engine, by the way, the 3.0, which was first designed in Europe and first used going back more than 15 years in like Land Rovers and Range Rovers. Again, unless we're wrong, it does not need that special low ash synthetic. There's like a DOT or an SAE spec, and we check it every time. And regular Mobil 1 turbo diesel pickup oil, that's 5W40, works just fine. It works great. So there's nothing not to like about this truck. Almost nothing, I should say. The one thing we keep coming back to is the fact that it's got a 331, which kills the power when you're towing. And the other issue is that it's got a VGT. It's a single turbo, not a twin turbo like your EcoBoost. And the VGT does not have exhaust brake functionality. And so when you're going down a steep descent, there's not a lot of engine braking, hardly at all. The one exception to that we discovered was going through the mountains in Pennsylvania. Like if you know where Breezewood is, we were going from Breezewood to Chambersburg on like, I don't know, US 30 or something a week or two ago, and we were going down a steep like 12% incline for about 3 to 5 miles. And when you downshift all the way down to second at about 30 or 40 miles an hour, it'll get the RPMs up to 4,000 or 4,500. And even without the turbo, cinching down on those vanes to restrict your exhaust flow, it'll still produce some amount of braking force and help you control the truck going downhill at slow speeds, meaning like 40 miles an hour. But going down at like 60 or 70, I should say 60, 50 or 60, as we are soon to discover in the Rockies, I don't think it's all that good. It's kind of like the old 5.9 Cummins before they put the VGT in that, when they moved it up to a 6.7. And so if we could fix two things about this truck, we would get a programmer and tune that stupid turbo so that it would operate as an exhaust brake and help control the truck and trailer going downhill. And then the other thing we'd change is getting rid of that 331 and swapping it out with a 373. If we had thought to do it when we had our Power Boost, we would have done it then, because our Power Boost had a 373, as do all four-wheel drive Power Boosts. And that would have been nice to swap out the 373 into this truck and then put the 331 into the Power Boost, to maybe give it even better MPGs. It gets like between 20 and 22 on the highway. And it would have done a little bit of damage to this thing's empty MPGs, which are like 28 to 30. And yeah, maybe it would have reduced it to like 25, 26, 27. But it would have given us a lot more towing power, which is the main reason we have this truck, for like light duty towing in our 28-foot trailer up to about an 8,000 or 85-pound trailer. So we will see how this thing functions in the Rockies. We're heading out, we'll be going out on I-80 through Wyoming and Utah tomorrow. And then the following day we'll be going through the Sierra Nevadas, like Lake Tahoe area, and through like Donner Pass and things like that. And so we'll see just how well this truck works under relatively extreme operating conditions, fully loaded to almost the max GVW and almost the max gross combined weight, which is 16.3, and we're 2,000 pounds under that. Okay, so it's giving us the DEF warning now. And next opportunity we get, we'll top it off. All right, thanks everyone. Hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. More to follow when this thing gets into the Rockies and we see how it operates. Have a great day.